Good morning. I'm going to start by just thanking you all for being here. I know there's a sacrifice involved from each and every one of you. I'm guessing some of you are less excited about being sequestered on this jury than others, but nonetheless, we need you and we thank you for your service. It's what makes the jury system work, so thank you very much. Mr. Smith just told you this, so I'll just put it right there on the table. You may recall during voir dire, I think it's one of the structures, talked about how she expected to hear from doctors that would support the fact that the defendant was not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect, and doctors that would refute that. It may surprise you to know there are no doctors that refute it. There are 3 doctors, and they all came to the same conclusion, just like Mr. Smith said. So it's easy to say, well, then why are we here? And the answer is because the state believes their conclusions are flawed. They're flawed because it's based on a misunderstanding of what's really going on here, what was happening the day of this incident. Not what happened afterwards, not what somebody said even a day or a month or a week or a year later, or years later, but what was going on when this happened. You know, and maybe it shouldn't be so surprising that the doctors have reached this conclusion. Their job is to treat mentally ill people. They are trained for it. They see mental illness everywhere. But more than that, they're no different than anything else. We live in a world in which we don't expect 12-year-olds to hatch a plan to kill their friends. And so they're predisposed to think, well, there must be a reason why this happened. And there is. But you have to remember that not all the things that a doctor sees rise to the level of giving a person that not guilty by mental disease or defect verdict. Specifically, the statute says, first, that you have to find that the defendant suffered from mental disease or defect. There are all kinds of mental diseases or defects. I dare say most people have them. But if we simply said all mental diseases or defects would result in a path on criminal responsibility, the prisons would be empty, because basically everybody has one. I'm afraid of heights. Is that a mental disease? Yes. Would it justify me doing things like the defendant did in this case? Absolutely not. So that's why we look more so to the second factor. Did it cause her to lack substantial capacity to appreciate the wrongfulness of her conduct? And I don't think the defense is going there. She made statements. She knew this was wrong. Morgan made statements. They knew this was wrong. They talked about the consequences, prison. I believe Morgan even mentioned the possibility of the death penalty. Now, that's not something we have in Wisconsin, but it just shows you they understood what they were doing was wrong. There's going to be actions we're going to talk about in a moment that happened that day that show they appreciated the wrongfulness of their conduct. So it's really the second prong. Were they able to conform their conduct to the law? And as Mr. Smith has told you, it's the defense's position that, based on their delusions, that Anissa believed that if she didn't kill Payton, that Slender Man would kill either her or her family. Okay, let's talk about that. First, Mr. Smith talked about that they believed they were in danger of immediate and inescapable harm. I believe that's an exact quote. Immediate and inescapable. Well, first of all, let's talk about immediate. You're going to hear evidence that they were planning this for months and months. It doesn't really have that immediacy the way I think of immediate. Secondly, you're going to hear that on the day this happened, the day they've decided to go through with this after planning it on the bus and for these months, Anissa wakes up. The 3 girls are sleeping in the same room. The original plan was to get up in the middle of the night, kill Payton, and leave. And Anissa wakes up at 1:30, tries to wake up Morgan, and Morgan's like, nah, it's too early, we're not going to do it right now. If they were really, truly afraid of an immediate harm to themselves or their families, from a fictional character that apparently knows all and sees all, wouldn't they be thinking, oh geez, if we don't get up now and do this, Slender Man's going to be mad? That's not what happens. They don't. They go back to sleep. Now they're back asleep. They wake up the next morning. Do they get up the next morning and execute the plan? Well, no. First they play dress up. They do the things that 12-year-olds do. Finally, they go to the park. And at the park, do they immediately kill Payton? Or try to kill Payton, I should say? No. They go to the bathroom. That's the original plan. We're going to do it in the bathroom. I believe it was Anissa that said, because there was a floor drain in there for the blood. Anissa is the one that's supposed to stab Payton. She can't do it. Clearly, she appreciates the wrongfulness of her conduct. She wants Morgan to do it. And in that bathroom, first there'll be a, I can't do it by Anissa. Then there'll be a, I can't do it by Morgan. Along the way, they'll restrain Payton. They'll throw her against the wall. But nobody can go through with the stabbing, so it doesn't happen in the bathroom. They leave the bathroom. They go play in the park. Eventually, they lead Payton into the woods. And in the woods, Morgan has the knife. Now remember, we're supposed to believe that Morgan is the dominant character here who's leading Anissa down the wrong path. And yet it's in the woods. In the woods, Morgan's got a knife. What does Anissa do? Morgan's holding back. She's waiting. Anissa says, go berserk. Go for it. It's Anissa, not Morgan, that initiates the final act. Morgan is the one that does the stabbing. I'm not denying that. But it's on Anissa's command. Go berserk. And Morgan unfortunately does. And Payton is stabbed repeatedly, and it's only through the grace of God that she's alive today. What happens then? Does someone go, oh my God, look what we've done? No. In fact, they try to lead her further into the woods. They tell her to lay down under the guise of, you'll lose less blood. We're going to go get help. Anissa will tell you, she just told her that so she'd lay down and bleed to death. In her state, that's what she said. She might not use those exact words. She wants her to lay down. They want her to bleed out. And she will specifically say, she didn't go get her help. She told her that to calm her down, but it was not her intention to go get her help. It was her intention to do this walk to the Nicolet National Forest. Was it a realistic walk? I know Mr. Smith talked about it. I believe he said 4,000 minutes. I'm guessing he meant 400, since they're supposed to walk it in 2.5 days. But the fact that they didn't bring the appropriate supplies, what does that mean? There's nobody questioning that that was their thought process as they walked away. We're going to walk to the Nicolet National Forest. The fact that as 12-year-old girls, they weren't smart enough to bring appropriate supplies, maybe, but they're walking in their minds to the Nicolet National Forest. But what we really need to look at, as I've said over and over, is that prong of, were they able to conform their conduct to the law? You know, Dr. Caldwell, child expert, he notes in his report that he believes that delusional orders can be shared. That's what this is all about. I don't think there's any real question about whether delusional disorders exist. We've all heard, at least, of people that have delusions. The real question here is, can they be shared? Can Morgan have a delusion so strong and because of her dominant personality somehow put that upon Anissa? Because that's what Dr. Caldwell says. This can happen when a seriously ill dominant person and a more submissive, vulnerable person form a close emotional bond, and the submissive individual adopts the belief system of the more dominant individual. Is it true that Anissa is adopting the beliefs, the delusional beliefs of a more dominant personality? As I said, it's Anissa that says go berserk. Is Morgan really more dominant, or are they just more co-actors? I think it's more the latter. But here's what this case is really all about. It's about wanting something. It is not about a belief that if we don't kill Payton, Slender Man's coming after our family or ourselves. It is not about it. And that's important, because then, if you don't believe that, if you do not believe that Slender Man was coming after them or their families, then that inability to conform their conduct to the law disappears. Do they have a delusion that Slender Man's real? Maybe. Kids believe in Santa Claus. Is that a delusion? Yes, it is. But it's not a bad delusion. So is it a big deal if they believe that Slender Man exists? Well, I think Anissa makes statements. It's Not even so clear that she truly believes he exists, but okay. We believe in Slender Man, but can we conform our conduct? And this is what I'm getting at. At the time she is arrested, Anissa gives that statement, and you've seen snippets. You've seen snippets that are good for the defense of that tape. This is one of the things, though, that Anissa says in that interview. And this is a quote. Silly thing about this was I didn't know I was in danger until after Morgan stabbed Payton. How can she be acting upon this fear that Slender Man is going to hurt her or her family if she didn't know she was in danger until after Morgan stabbed Payton? And further on, to give you an idea of what that means, she says as they're walking away from the scene, she has what she called a nervous breakdown. She said she was scared for herself and her family because Morgan told her shortly after she stabbed Payton that Morgan had made a deal with Slender Man that if they didn't kill Payton, he would kill or could kill their families. She doesn't engage in this act because she's worried about her families, because she doesn't even know about this deal, this threat, until it's over. So then why did she do it? And I think the answer is in parts of Mr. Smith's opening statement. She doesn't have any. She's lonely. She's depressed. And all of a sudden, Morgan is her friend. And Morgan wants to do this. So what does Anissa do? She goes along because she wants to preserve her one and only friendship. Not because she's afraid, but because she's lonely and she wants something. She wants the friendship with Morgan, and she doesn't want it to end. She doesn't want a situation where Morgan says, well, if you're not going to help me, I don't want to be your friend anymore, because that's all she's got. And she wants to be a proxy of Slender Man, which is different than being afraid that Slender Man is going to kill your family. That's a want. You know, I'm a real person. If I told them they could be my proxies if they killed somebody, would that make it all right? Would that mean that they would go, oh, well, Mr. Osborne wants me to, so I'm going to kill somebody? No. That's a want. They want to be a proxy. It doesn't cause them to do this. It doesn't make them need to do this. They are not afraid, or at least Anissa, I should say, and that's what we're talking about today, is not afraid for herself or her family because she doesn't even know it's an issue until after the act is over. You cannot be motivated by something you don't even know about until after the fact. And that's the evidence that the state wants you to concentrate on. Those are the facts the state believes show you that Anissa was not in a position where she was unable to conform her behavior to the dictates of law. Quite the opposite. She knew what she was doing was wrong, and she did it because she wanted something out of it. She wanted to be Morgan's friend. Maybe she wanted to be a proxy of Slender Man, but not because she believed Slender Man was coming after her or her family. Thank you.